My most recent cruise was on the brand new Utopia of the Seas, a third-generation Oasis Class ship from Royal Caribbean. In this week's video, we're going to go on a detailed tour to compare it to the Symphony of the Seas, which is a second-generation Oasis Class ship. Are there any big differences? Well, keep on watching and you'll find out. I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. I've been making travel videos for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And I also wrote a little book called Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship. It's available on Amazon now. Let's take a look at these ships. The first impression you get when boarding any Oasis class ship is usually the gigantic Royal Promenade. This is a long, covered, indoor space in the middle of the ship that's home to several restaurants, bars, and shopping opportunities. Almost everything in here is in the same place on both ships, like the karaoke venue, the Starbucks in the middle, and the Bolero's bar across from that. The quick service pizza restaurant Sorrento's is also in the same place, serving the same pizza, but there is one minor difference and one bigger difference. On the Symphony, there is a car that's been squished into the shape of a ball. And on the Utopia, it's an actual full-size car, and the name of the ship is there as well. It's a great photo opportunity, by the way. And here's the big difference. On the Symphony of the Seas, across from the guest relations is the Bionic Bar. This is a venue that Royal introduced on its Quantum class of ships back in 2014. You can order and customize your drink from a touchscreen around the bar, and then a robotic bartender will mix it up for you right before your eyes. These bionic bars were really popular when they were new, but nowadays it's kind of a one-and-done experience. Royal pulled a great move on the Utopia by transforming this space into the pesky parrot tiki bar. This may be one of the greatest improvements on the ship, in my opinion, as it is now a bar with atmosphere and a fun vibe that looks inviting to hang out in. Question: the menu has a lot of really interesting drinks and shows them in different cups and mugs, like you would expect from a tiki bar on land. But I was a little disappointed that, no matter what you order, it comes in the standard Royal Caribbean cocktail glass and not in a tiki mug like shown on the menu. Is that a big deal or no? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's move towards the back of the ship and the indoor-outdoor boardwalk area where some changes have been made and other things are exactly the same. The carousel and the hot dog restaurants are in the same place, as are the sports bar and Johnny Rockets, which remains the least expensive specialty restaurant on the ship as far as I know. It's always empty though. I feel like I hardly ever see anybody eating at Johnny Rockets. Do you eat there? What are some highlights on the menu? All right, here are some big changes I've noticed. On the Symphony, the back of the aqua theater is made out of these sort of flimsy tent flaps, which allow a lot of wind and light to come through, which I think affects the show experience. And honestly, because it's so open, I want to say it might also affect how many times the show has to get canceled due to weather. On the Utopia, they greatly improved this by adding a more permanent wall behind the aqua theater that blocks out the wind, and it just looks so much better than the tent flaps, if you ask me. See the difference? This is the back of the Symphony with the tent flaps, and this is the back of the Utopia with the wall. Which one do you think looks better? The structure of the seating has changed a bit too. On the Symphony, some of the rows of seats in the aqua theater are these colorful deck chairs, which look nice, and I'm sure it's much more comfortable than a bench, but each individual chair takes up a lot of space, which I think reduces the capacity for these really popular shows. On the Utopia, the individual seats have been removed and every row is just a bench-style seating, which I think is better. You can squish more people in there when the show gets really full. Okay, here's a big thing that has changed on the Utopia that I don't think is good, and that is these shared balcony spaces on the back of Deck 7. On the Symphony, if you walk all the way to the back of Deck 7 on both sides, you come out to the rock climbing walls, and around the corner from them are these big sort of hidden public balcony spaces, which are a great place to read a book or just relax and listen to the ocean. On the Utopia, this door doesn't exist. You can't walk out the back of Deck 7. The shared balcony space is gone, which I think is too bad. One more thing that you might notice is different is in the layout of the Ultimate Abyss slides. Just for your information, these are not water slides, they are dry slides. You ride down them in a mat. The Symphony has the same layout as all the other Oasis class ships, but the Utopia has some added special effects and this straight stretch in the middle that goes a little bit faster. With or without the straightaway, of course, these are impressive to look at from the outside. It's not necessarily something you're going to want to do over and over, but it is fun to do once, and the version on the Utopia did seem faster to me. Another thing a little different about the boardwalk area on the Utopia compared to all the other Oasis class ships is the main restaurant space overlooking the boardwalk is no longer Wonderland, but it's been replaced with a very large Giovanni's. Not only that, they've also added outdoor seating, which is a huge plus if you ask me. I really like this trend of more and more ships having outdoor seating for their restaurants and bars. I think NCL is a step ahead of Royal as far as that goes, but this is a good start. Okay, moving on to Central Park, another really unique space on the Oasis class of ships where you can be outside, underneath the sun, but actually still inside the ship. There are also balcony cabins overlooking this space, which I'll be talking about in more detail in an upcoming video. In the front end of Central Park on the Symphony of the Seas, you'll find Jamie's Italian and the Vintage's wine bar. We had lunch at Jamie's on the Symphony, and I thought it was one of our best meals on the cruise. Can highly recommend checking it out, especially for lunch, if you're interested in trying one of the specialty restaurants. On Utopia, there is no Jamie's or Vintage's wine bar. This entire space is taken up by Itsumi, which offers sushi and other Japanese and Asian-inspired dishes. We didn't eat here on the Utopia, but take a look at the menu. It does sound pretty tasty. Let's make our way up to the top deck where some of the biggest differences are. And on the way up, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this about the Utopia and other cruise and travel destinations. One of the biggest things I felt was missing on the Utopia was any kind of decoration or atmosphere in the adults-only Solarium area. Check out this beautiful light sculpture installation thing on the Symphony of the Seas. I feel like it creates such a great vibe in this area, especially at night. It just seemed really special. On the Utopia, there's nothing here. It's just open. Another thing to notice is, check out the roof structure. On the Utopia, it's completely enclosed, which means that area is also air conditioned to an extent, whereas on the Symphony, it's not a closed roof. There are openings letting in the fresh air, the sun, and of course the rain if it starts raining. Other than that, the pools, the lounging areas, and the Solarium Bistro, which is also included in the price of the cruise and highly recommended, they all seem basically the same on both ships. The Utopia does have one less hot tub, as this area on the port side of the Solarium where there used to be a hot tub is now the view bar. Anybody in the mood for a cocktail? Okay, question. What is going on here on the Utopia? On the Symphony, there are viewing platforms out on this area, and on Utopia, there's this weird rock garden. Did they change this into cabins as well, or what's going on here? I couldn't figure it out. All right, let's move towards the back of the ship and take a look at the Waterpark. Zooming in on the Perfect Storm slides here on the left side, I think they're exactly the same layout, but the difference is on Utopia, they added some more see-through sections of the slide, whereas on the Symphony, they're almost totally enclosed. I like the see-through sections personally, but the slide experience is basically the same. The other slide, the one that everybody says looks like a toilet bowl, that is very different. Here on the Symphony, you can see it has a much more twisty part before the bowl, but on the Utopia, you drop straight down into the bowl. It's apparently much faster and gives you more rounds before you drop down into the end. I couldn't really tell the difference. The design of the two pools next to the water slides is a bit different too. On both ships, you have the beach pool on one side of Central Park. The metal palm trees on the Utopia offer a little bit of shade, and I think the painting of the deck is supposed to make it look like it's like sand turning into the ocean. On the Symphony, the deck looks a little more like sand, and there are umbrellas instead of metal trees. What's on the other side is very different, however. On the Utopia, this is where the Splashaway Bay Children's Area is. I always love watching this big bucket dump down on everyone. On the Symphony, this side is just a normal pool and the Splashaway Bay area is back towards the Windjammer on the other side. I'm not sure why that was changed, but if I had to guess, I would say they realized it was better to put the splash area closer to the water slides to make it easier for families with kids of different ages. The bigger kids can do the bigger slides, and the parents can stay close to the splash area with the smaller kids, and everybody's kind of still in the same section. In the middle of the pool deck, both ships have a bridge that crosses over Central Park. On the Utopia, this is themed as the Lime and Coconut Bar, and you can see there are cabanas here, as well as a solid structure that goes up and over the top. On the Symphony, this area is much smaller. See the difference in the roof structure over the top? There's almost nothing there on Symphony. Also, no cabanas either. On the Utopia, behind the Lime and Coconut, there are two normal pools again with the stationary metal palm trees, but the starboard side pool on the Utopia has like a little more water area in it, with some loungers actually in the water, whereas on the Symphony, the pool is a little bit smaller, and as I mentioned, across from that is the Splashaway Bay area on Symphony, which is by the water slides on Utopia. Okay, now we're coming to a huge difference and something I kept getting confused by on my most recent cruise. On the Symphony of the Seas, you can walk from the main pool deck underneath the Windjammer all the way to the back of the ship where the other activities are that we're going to be looking at in a second. But on the Utopia, that is where the Windjammer is. They completely redid this area on the Utopia, and the Windjammer is now one deck below where it is on the Symphony. You can see here on the Symphony, you have to be on the upper pool deck to get into the Windjammer, but on the Utopia, the upper pool deck is the one that continues onto the back of the ship, and the lower deck is the one that turns into the Windjammer. Looking at it from the back, on the Utopia, you can see all these windows down here. That is Windjammer. And then the sports deck is on top of that. On the Symphony, there are cabins underneath the sports deck, which must be really loud with people jumping around on top of there all day. I think it's a good move that they switched this. While I was on the Symphony, I got to do a cabin crawl and see inside a few of the really big suites on board. There are videos about those on the channel, so check out the library. One thing that surprised me was that the biggest suites have no privacy on their balcony on the Symphony because they look out over the sports deck. And that being said, the people on the sports deck are looking up at you all day long. They switched this on the Utopia, and now the space that was the Windjammer on Symphony is the Coastal Kitchen Suites only restaurant, and above that, where the big suites are on Symphony, is the suites only sun deck on Utopia. This is a much better layout which provides the people paying like $15,000 to cruise in a suite some privacy on their balcony. One dining venue I loved on both ships is the El Loco Fresh Taco Bar. I had many lunches here on both cruises, and I wish it was open for dinner too. I want a salsa bar like this in my house. Is that too much to ask? The restaurant's location is the same on both ships, but on the Utopia, the back seating area includes the Cantina Fresca bar, so you can get a Corona or a margarita to go with your quesadilla. And as far as further activities, both ships have the Flow Rider, gigantic mini golf course, zip line, and a playscape at the very back of the top deck. The only difference is the sports court and the mini golf course have been swapped. On the Symphony, the sports court is right behind the taco bar, and on the Utopia, the mini golf is right behind the taco bar. I wonder if there's a practical reason why they switched this around, or if it had to do with weight or something. Either way, that's our look around these different generations of Oasis class ships, the Utopia of the Seas and the Symphony of the Seas. And now listen, I know there are more differences. Some things I probably just missed, and some things I figured weren't worth talking about. From the things I showed, let me know what you think about the ship and the changes in comparison to the older model. Anything that really stands out as an improvement or downgrade to you? Make sure you tune in for next week's vlog where I take you out on my balcony and show you two different things that I think were cameras, and we'll talk again about balcony privacy on cruise ships. I look forward to showing you around and hearing what you have to say about that too.
I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. Hope to see you back here soon.